Hello and welcome back to the Frugal Granny channel. I'm Frugal Granny. My name's Ali and I'm a semi-retiree documenting my retirement journey and how I managed to bridge the gap between my reduction in earnings and what I need to live on between now and when I get the state pension in 2 years' time. On Thursdays, we usually have a coffee and catch up, and today is Thursday. And I'm not sure quite which coffee and catch up we're on. I think it's coffee and catch up 10, which is quite incredible to think that this channel's been going for over 3 months now. And I want to thank everybody who's back here watching again. Those of you who keep coming back, thank you so very much. And if you're here for the first time, it's lovely to see you and I hope you stick around. This week, as those of you who follow me all the time will know, I've got family with me. It's a family holiday week. I have 4 adult children and the oldest lives on the other side of the world, and they come back as a family every summer. And this week is my week. Each key member of the family gets a week with them, and this week is my week. So they've been staying in a local hotel, but we've been spending the days together and we've had a really great time. On Monday, I met them halfway from where they were driving from. They've driven up from the southeast of England, and it's a long way up north. And rather than see the grandkids tired and grumpy at the end of the day, I suggested we met somewhere halfway or just over halfway so that we could have a couple of hours together, and then that they could go on to the hotel and refreshed, but we'd still actually made the most of the day. So on Monday we met up and we had a great time. It was really lovely to see them. I mean, my little grandkids are a year older and they're absolutely gorgeous. Then on Tuesday I took them to a local petting zoo. And despite all of my resolutions not to spend money, it's so really difficult. They got a toy each at the place we met on Monday, and then obviously I had to pay for the petting zoo on Tuesday. They didn't want to go to the free petting zoo because we went there last year and the year before. They wanted to go somewhere different, so I suggested this other one. And there was an entrance fee, and then of course you have to pay money for the animal food. But we had a great time there. It was really lovely. I think we were the only people in the petting zoo, apart from another young family and an older couple. The first day, the grandkids and obviously my son and his wife came back to my house for tea. On Tuesday, they came to my house for lunch. I had to work that evening, unfortunately, but my London son made a very nice pasta and ragu for all of them. My 3 sons had the evening together while my daughter-in-law took the little ones back to the hotel. Today's Thursday and I've got a day to myself. They've gone off to see old university pals, or I think my daughter-in-law's gone to see her aunts in another town and taken the grandchildren with her, which is quite good really. It's really good to have a bit of a breather after 3 very full-on days, and before another 3 days that are probably going to be even more full-on, because my daughter will be bringing her partner and his child with them on Saturday, and my London son and his partner will be back. And my youngest son will have his girlfriend here, so it's going to be the whole family for a big barbecue on Saturday. And then I've got 1 more day with my oldest son and the grandkids, and then they're all off on Monday. All of them, all gone again, and life will return to normal. Right, so in the midst of all of this family joviality, what has happened? Well, the main thing that's happened this week is that my car has started growling, which really is not good. I mean, as a lot of people in the UK know, cities and towns right across the nation are installing traffic bumps and humps, and you do your best to avoid them, but I think I've probably hit one a little bit too hard and dislodged something underneath my car. So my car's booked into the garage for tomorrow, which is not brilliant because I've got my oldest son and his kids with me, and I can't fit. Actually, I might be able to fit into their car because my daughter-in-law's going off to see some university friends that day, so I could fit in the car, so it probably will be all right. So I'm just sort of holding my breath to see what repair is needed on the car. I'm not too worried about it because I have a sinking fund for car repairs that I can fall back on. Other news this week, the office job annuity, things have moved along a bit. I had an email from them to say that the annuity provider has now received the funds from my office job employer, and that the annuity is in the process of being set up subject to various checks and receipt of documents, and it could be set up within the next 5 to 10 working days, which is 2 weeks, which is the end of July, which is amazingly good news. I don't know whether the administrator told me September just to manage my expectations, but it's all happening a lot quicker than I hoped, which is fantastic. I did ring them up yesterday morning very quickly because I had a comment from someone saying that from what I'd said in an earlier video, maybe the catch up last week, it sounded like I'd bought an annuity with a guarantee period. Well, I know I haven't. I probably just expressed it incorrectly when I described how it worked. So I rang them up yesterday just to check. And I have actually bought an annuity with 100% protection, which basically means that if I die at any point, whatever's left in the fund will go to my nominated beneficiaries. And I've protected it to 100%. I know that means I'm going to get a reduced annuity every month, but I've already got an enhanced annuity because they think I'm fat. So by the time they've taken off the money, I shall probably just be getting what I would have got if I was thin. Anyway, so the annuity administrator told me that they'd got a note on the file to chase the annuity provider on Monday, and I said, could they please also ask while they were doing that whether the provider had the medical report from my GP, because I think if anything's going to hold things up, it will be that. So they've put a note on my file to ask about that, and I expect I'll get another email next week to let me know how things are going. So that's the annuity. So it's all good news on that front. It's all going well. Now we've got over the initial decision-making hurdles. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and I don't really want to go into this in a lot of depth because there are some things that I do really want to keep to myself, but there were another couple of comments after the last catch-up where I mentioned that I had moved the lump sum for the office job annuity into a high interest account, asking me why I hadn't put it in my ISA. And effectively, I will be blunt about this, and I think the more astute of you will probably have already figured this out, that if I've had annuities from 2 other pensions from previous jobs, I've probably also had 2 other lump sums, which probably implies that my ISA allowance for this year has been used. So basically that is what's happened. My ISA allowance for this year is full, so the lump sum has gone into the highest performing high interest account that I have access to, and it will be moved into my ISA next tax year when the ISA allowance is renewed. And to be honest with you, who knows what that allowance will be, considering the current discussions in the media. I don't know if they're going to keep it at the current rate or whether it will go back down. So to the concerned of you out there that I've not done the best I can with my lump sum, please be assured that I've done the best I can, because the ISA allowance for this year has already been used up by the lump sums from my other 2 annuities. And I know that some of you are probably now doing rough maths on the back of an envelope, and that's fine, because when you get a pension, and you take the 25% lump sum, you do get a lump sum. But I want to say now that I am not intending to spend it. The interest on those lump sums is not to be sniffed at, and what I'm trying to do over the 2 years between now and getting my state pension is to accrue that interest, to build on it, because effectively, if I'd followed plan A, which, you know, I had several plans when it came to my retirement, and if I'd followed plan A, I would have worked until I was 66 and 3/4, effectively another 2 years and 2 weeks. And so those pensions would have stayed in their funds until then, accruing more worth. So effectively, that's what I want those lump sums to do while they're in my sticky mitts, is to keep accruing worth for the next 2 years. Because otherwise, I mean, I'm already losing money by having retired early and taken those pensions early. I don't want to lose any more by starting to dig into those lump sums unless I absolutely have to. So do as many mathematical calculations as you like. You know, I may be sitting on those lump sums, but I'm not spending them because I need them to try and accrue as much as they can over the next 2 years, because when I get to state pension age, I may not be in a position to be able to keep on working part-time. I may not want to, and so I need that money to do the best as it can between now and then. So that's a rather long-winded answer to those 2 comments, and probably more information than I really wanted to share, because I'm a little bit embarrassed about being in possession of those lump sums. But then why should I be? You know, I've worked for them, and if I'd gone according to plan A, they wouldn't be within reach of my sticky mitts at the moment anyway. They'd be in some big company's stocks and shares investment folder. But the way things seem to be going with pensions at the moment, I really wanted that money to be accessible to me. And I know that they're not going to earn as much as if I'd left them in the pension schemes, but I just wanted them to be accessible. And you know, on that note, I wouldn't say to any of you out there, you know, rush out and cash in your pensions. You need to take advice about your pensions. I have just done what I felt was best for me, what sat best with my heart, and I would not say that that's the way to go for you. I'm not a financial advisor, I'm just sharing my experience. So if you want to know what to do with your pensions, you need to do the research, do the reading, and take financial advice. Okay, so I think that's probably answered most of the financial related comments that have come up over the last week. Otherwise, how things are going? Well, you saw I did a shopping haul for the family, and the remaining £10 has now been spent on a crate of beer for my sons for the barbecue, so the food budget's now blown. I've already hinted that I've spent money on 2 gifts for my grandchildren and entry tickets to a petting zoo that I'd not budgeted for. There's also been the purchase of an extra long bath mat for the bath, so when they're in the house with me this weekend rather than sleeping at the hotel and they want to use the bath, the 2 kids can sit in there without danger of slipping over. So I think that was $14.99, so that's another $14.99 I hadn't budgeted for. And let me just have a quick look at my budget sheet, because although I've spent some money that I hadn't anticipated spending, I've been keeping a note of it. I've also been keeping track of my anticipated salary from the supermarket, And as far as I can see, the money I've spent is still within reason. It just means that I'm going to have to reallocate that money slightly differently than I had initially anticipated. So looking at the spreadsheet, the unanticipated expenses have been parking at the attraction I met my son and his family at on Monday. That was £9 that I hadn't anticipated, which was a bit silly because I knew that I was going to have to park, so I should have thought about that. The gifts at the attraction came to £16. That was £8 for each child. The extra long bath mat was $8.99, not $14.99. The $14.99 was a pashmina that I've bought to go to the college reunion because the dress that I've got for that evening is sleeveless, and A, I want to hide the top of my arms, and B, it might be a bit chilly. Oh yeah, the other thing that I bought was a phone holder for my phone, so that when I was finding my way to this attraction on Monday, I wouldn't have to keep looking down at the passenger seat where my phone was. So I bought this phone holder that clips to the air vents rather than sticks to the windscreen, and it's been absolutely marvellous actually. That was $6.99, so that was $6.99 well spent. So I'm going to have to take these things into account when I do my supermarket income budget allocation on Saturday, which you're very welcome to join in with, and we'll see how it goes. But from what I've looked at the moment, I'm still within budget, and it just means that I won't be able to put as much money into personal savings as I would have liked, or into the buffer fund, but we're still okay. The only things that I need to buy now before my family go on Monday are burger buns and hot dog buns for the barbecue, and maybe some salad and a couple of bottles of white wine or Prosecco. So I think we're well on budget, and some of those food items can come out of week 4's housekeeping, because once they've gone there'll be all sorts of leftovers to eat up, and I can just eat out of the freezer for that week. I'd be quite happy to eat porridge oats with frozen berries or whatever is in the freezer, quite frankly, because we've all eaten very well this week, and I'm beginning to feel the effects after all my hard work. It's slightly undone, but you know, trying to eat healthily and get your weight down is a little bit of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes. So, what else has happened this week? Well, I had a little bit of a drama with my debit cards and my second credit card. My son and the grandchildren are going to be sleeping in this room when they're here with me at the weekend, and I was having a bit of a tidy up yesterday, putting away things that I didn't want little fingers to be fiddling with. And one of the things that I thought is I better put my debit cards for my spare accounts and my secondary credit card in a safe place. And I went to the place where I normally keep them, and they weren't there. And of course I had a little panic, and then I thought, you know, you've already put them somewhere safe because of when the guy was here doing the front of the house, because he had to come in and out of various rooms of the house to open and shut windows. And I just had one of those midlife moments when I could not remember where I had put them. I'd put them somewhere so safe, I couldn't remember where I put them. But I've done this so many times over the last few years that I decided not to panic. And I just kept sort of tidying up and putting things away. And I thought, you know, I'll come across them eventually. And I was systematically going through things to think, well, did I put them here? Did I put them there? And eventually a little thought crept into the back of my mind, and I realised where I'd put them, and there they were. So that was like disaster averted. So what I've done now is I've actually left myself, I think it's rather funny, I've left myself a little sort of treasure trail with little clues all around the house. So if I go and look in a certain place and they're not there, I've left myself a little note which will give me a clue to where to look next. So that's quite funny. But that was a little sort of minor personal disaster that was quickly averted by knowing myself well enough now to know exactly what I've done and what I need to do to resolve that. Well, I'm just trying to think what else has happened this week. Obviously, the time's mainly been filled up with family, and yesterday we all went to the park where I walk with Kitty, and Kitty was very excited to go to the park. And we were walking by the river and we saw this little duckling being washed down the river, and it was obviously really struggling and flapping its neck about, and it was going backwards. And so my son dashed into the water and scooped it up, and it obviously was, I don't know whether it was born not correctly because its neck was doing this sort of thing, or whether it was just frantically trying to get out of the fast moving water, because we've had a lot of rain over the last day or two, and when that happens, unfortunately, a lot of the younger ducklings, and this one had only still got its down on it, it hadn't got any feathers, it's still yellow and brown stripy down, which means it was only a day or two old. Well, I took it in my hands and I sort of tried to warm it up, and it calmed down a bit, and we walked along with it, and we just wondered whether we would find the mother duck and her family. We found 2 duck families, one of the families that I've been watching for a number of weeks, and they all still had their ducklings, but they were older, but we couldn't find a mother duck with day-old or 2-day-old chicks. And actually, by the time we'd walked a few more 100 yards up the riverbank, I looked down at it and it sort of opened its beak and stretched and then just died. It was really, really, really sad, actually. And it's affected me quite a lot over the last 12 hours. I mean, sometimes, despite your best efforts, things, you just can't save a situation. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm quite glad I've now not got a pet duck, but at the same time it was really, really sad that it died. And it's funny, once you sort of get into a sad mindset, other things sort of start creeping in that are also sad. And this morning I was just thinking a little bit about, how things ended for me at the office job, and my son and my daughter-in-law were asking me about that at lunchtime yesterday, and I was telling them a little bit of my side of the story. And I think, stirring up the mud at the bottom of the pond, so to speak, it can affect you. And I was quite tearful this morning, actually. I felt a couple of tears pricking about the way things were handled in February. I don't really want to say any more. My daughter-in-law actually said to me that she felt that it sounded like it could even have been a matter for HR. I mean, it never even crossed my mind about the way I'd been informed that my job had been taken into the restructure, when I believed initially when I took the job that it wouldn't be. Anyway, I have said I would talk about this a bit at some point, but I'm not sure I really want to. But yeah, I've been a little bit sad about it this morning. I don't want to go back and work there, but I'm just sad about the way it happened. And I think it's important to sort of mention this, because although there is the joyfulness and jubilation of, leaving a place that's given you anxiety and stress, and, and becoming semi-retired and having more time to yourself, there still is some grieving to be done. And to be honest with you, I've probably not really done that. I'm very, very good at repressing my feelings when it comes to bereavement, loss and grief. I've had my fair share of it in this life, right from quite an early age, actually, and I've become very good at pushing it down and not acknowledging it. And so it was quite interesting this morning to, to feel the odd tear pricking in the corner of my eyes, because it reminded me that, once the family have gone and life quietens down a bit, there's still some inner work to be done when it comes to the whole semi-retirement and leaving the office job thing. I'm just going to leave that there for now, because I think we may have to come back to this at a later date. I think the only other thing left to report probably is the state of my YouTube journey. I think I mentioned last week that views were down, and I'm very aware that it's the holiday season, that we've had the 4th of July, we've had Wimbledon tennis, we've got people my age who have gone off on holiday in the 2 weeks before the end of the English school term, because once the school term finishes, prices rise significantly. So people have been taking advantage of cheaper holiday prices. I've also done a little bit of I've done a little bit more digging into the YouTube analytics, and I've also realised that YouTube income is not just about views, it's about how much advertisers are willing to pay YouTube to put their advert on your video. And I will be quite honest and say that my prospective income for the month of June is really, really good, whereas for July it's going to look like it'll only be half as much as that. So I looked through something called the CPM, which I think is the count per mil, or it's something to do with how much advertisers will pay YouTube per 1,000 views if they can get their advert on your video. And what happened in June is that my CPMs were really, really high. I mean, one of them was £28, which I've never heard of. I think that was Coffee and Catch-Up 5, which in my analytics is showing as a massive, massive peak. And I don't know why advertisers felt they wanted to be on Coffee and Catch-Up 5, but it was massive. Whereas I think people, the advertisers, not people, have obviously sort of come to their senses a bit this month, because my CPMs have gone back down to what they were in May. And so I think June was probably a very anomalous month. And so for me to be worrying about how things had dropped in July, the current month, is probably nothing to worry about. It was really, it was really quite explainable in terms of what people are doing in their personal lives and what advertisers are deciding to do in relation to YouTube. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am not changing my content for advertisers. If they don't want to put their ads on my videos, that's absolutely fine. I'm doing these videos for myself as much as anything. I've been on social media for at least 12 years. I started out on Facebook when I was left on my own as a way of visual journaling. And then my London son showed me Instagram, and I joined Instagram because of him, because I liked the way that pictures were shown in the squares. And he said, you might like to do this. And I documented my personal journey through the little squares I still am. Obviously, it's tailed off a little bit at the moment because I'm obviously trying to split my energies between 2 platforms. But I have documented my journey on Instagram since 2012. So, and I did that for myself. I've never had any sponsorship or anything on Instagram. It has purely been for me, and I've made some lovely friends through it. If you look at my Instagram, I've actually archived everything now. There are some things that I don't want the global population to see, so I have archived some of the older things, and some of my initial Instagram posts were on a completely different account that's now private. So there's only a limited amount that people can see now, and that's my choice. but I've always been on social media for me as much as anything, so I'm not going to start pandering to advertisers. But that's been an interesting thing to look at the CPMs in the analytics and see why, to see that they've had a really big effect on how YouTube has been going. But in terms of helping to fill the gap that's been left by losing my office job salary, the couple of £100 a month I'm going to get from YouTube after tax will still be there, and I'm really very happy about it. And thank you very much for coming along on my journey with me. It's lovely having you along. And I want to thank those of you who over the last week have bought me a coffee and who have given me super thanks. And I'll quickly give you a shout out here. So super thanks in the last week. Thank you, Linda Hobbs and Tiffany and JB, Jules and Sital. And again, somebody who wants to remain anonymous. And thank you for buying me a coffee, Fanula, Nicola and Jackie. Thank you so very much. I really do appreciate it. Right, I think even with cutting out the bits that I don't want you to see or hear, this video is probably quite long enough now. I will be back on Saturday with an analysis of my supermarket income for the last 4 weeks. It's payday tomorrow. The pay slips were released at midnight last night. I've already been through mine. It's correct. And I've had a look at how I'm going to portion it out, especially in the light of the things that I've had to buy that I hadn't expected. And you're very welcome to come to the post-mortem of that with me on Saturday. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and I will be back on Saturday. Bye-bye for now. Actually, we've forgotten the kitty fix again, haven't we? 1 minute. Here she is. Hey, Kitty, look at the camera, darling. You're not listening to all of the creator gurus who say you've got to talk to the camera. You've got to talk to the camera. Yes, you have. Kitty is feeling completely hugged out. My grandchildren have been loving her to bits, and she's absolutely had enough. Haven't you, darling? You're very glad to have a day off today as well, aren't you? Okay, well, I'm going to put her back on her pillow, and she'll see you again on Saturday. Oh, yeah, look, she's waving at you. All right, then. Bye-bye from both of us.